This week on Dig Me Out. With your hosts, Jason Zia and Tim Minichi.
Jay, we're back again with another episode of Dig Me Out 90s and Aughts Rock. Thanks to our DMO union on Patreon. Join the union to vote on albums. Pick one to discuss with us on the show. Get access to bonus episodes and our private Discord community. Keep the podcast ad-free and make the next episode happen by joining us at digmeoutpodcast.com. And this is a rarity, Jay. We got to pick.
Yeah, finally.
Every once in a while, we have an open slot where we get to pick a record. And I pitched some band ideas. I didn't pitch records. I just threw some band names at you from the 2000s. And you said, let's do this.
Yeah.
So will you please, usually I say this to the guest, but since you picked this record, will you please introduce the album that we're going to talk about?
Yeah, we're going to do Pretty Girls Make Graves. You threw out that artist, and I went back and looked at the albums I had, and I chose Good Health. I had this. I have the EP, New Romance, and Elan Vital.
Yeah.
But this is the one that I remember being most blown away by. It felt like at the time something new, different, exciting. I remember playing the shit out of it. I think that I played a lot of the EP too. It was in that post at the drive-in era where just so many possibilities for where rock music could go. It all felt revitalized and exciting again. And this is one of those bands that was seeming to pick up the torch and was into them for a while. And I just totally forgot about them. So when the name came back, I was like, damn, we need to go back and listen to that. Cause that's been probably 15 years maybe since I've listened to this band.
I mean, this album came out, we're talking about Good Health, came out in 2002.
Yeah.
So it's been 24 years since the release of their debut album. You mentioned they had an EP before this, just self-titled, that came out on Dim Mak in 2001. And then they followed this album up with The New Romance in 2003. Good Health was released on Lookout Records, the Bay Area punk rock label. And then they signed to Matador. The New Romance was released in 2003, and Elan Vital was released in 2006. And then they broke up in 2007.
Okay.
So they were only together for 6 years. They have histories before that.
Yeah.
I don't know if we were aware at the time, but one of the members had been involved with the Murder City Devils.
Yeah. I remember that, but I never really thought of those two bands as being very similar, but maybe they are.
Correct. Yeah, I didn't either. So, like you, I own all their albums. Well, I have MP3s of all their albums. I did own Good Health on CD and Elan Vital. I don't know if I ever got the New Romance on CD.
I need to go look. I might have all of these on CD. I mean, this is maybe the 2006 album. I don't, but I know I have this one, and I know I have the EP. I was buying CDs then. It was right before, sort of peak CD, and then it fell off a cliff somewhere around when the iPod was popular. I just stopped buying them.
So the band is named after a Smiths song, which itself was named after a line from a Jack Kerouac book called The Dharma Bums, which came out in 1958. So Andrea Zolo, who's the lead singer, and Derek Fudesco, who's bass and backing vocals, they had played together in a band previous to this. That band was previously called The Hookers, and then it was also called The Death Wish Kids, and then it was also called Area 51. So they went through a couple of names. Dan Gallucci was in that band with them for a while. And that's Derek formed the Murder City Devils with Dan Gallucci. So when Murder City Devils disbanded. I don't know a ton about the Murder City Devils. I know they were a 90s band, but I don't know. I guess they broke up around 2001, which is when this band formed. So that would make sense. So Derek and Andrea formed Pretty Girls Make Graves, along with Jay Clark, Nick DeWitt, and Leona Mars. Andrea is the lead singer. Derek Fudesco is on bass and backing vocals, as mentioned. Jay Clark plays guitar, keyboards, samples, and backing vocals. Nick DeWitt plays drums, samples, keyboards, trumpet, and backing vocals. And Leona Mars plays keyboards, accordion, and backing vocals. Leona was the replacement for Nathan Thielen. He was the original second guitar player and backing vocalist. So they switched from being a 2-guitar band to being a 1-guitar band with a keyboard player. That must have been for the second record or for the third record, because Nathan was in the band until 2004 when the New Romance was out.
Okay. Yeah, so, that tracks. Because I remember, I didn't revisit the catalog, but my memory is that it becomes less guitar oriented as it goes.
Yeah.
A little bit more like keyboards and samples and stuff.
In January of 2007, the band announced that Nick DeWitt had left and that or was leaving the band, and that their tour would be the last. And then they all went off to do different things with other, like Jay Clark formed a band with one of the members of the Blood Brothers. There was a funny note here. It said that Clark formed Jaguar Love with Blood Brothers member Johnny Whitney and Cody Vodolato. They signed to Matador Records, the former label home of Pretty Girls Make Graves. On February 18th, 2009, it was announced Jay was no longer playing in the lineup of Jaguar Love, being replaced with a drum machine. That's
great.
Rough. Andrea Zolo played in a couple bands after this, but then she left music completely, and she's a hairstylist now. I looked her up on Facebook, and she just basically, she does hair. She's very nice. Like everybody who says, I loved your band, she's like, thank you. That's so kind of you and stuff. But she's moved on from being in the music. And they have reunited. They got together in 2003 to play a show for the When We Were Young festival. And they've done a show here and there, like one of those, reunion type shows where they get like, the bands of the early 2000s or something like that to.
It's wild to think we're there already.
Yeah, we're there.
Nostalgia tours for the early 2000s, but
I'm surprised Jizzy Pearl isn't being recruited into some of these bands.
We haven't reached that convergence yet. It's close. We've
somebody's got to.
We've merged the 80s and the 90s for sure. Like all of those artists now commingle. Like there's no division, so we're not far off from the 2000s being blended in there too.
We need to identify who the utility infielders of the 2000. Like there's going to be somebody who jumps from band to band constantly playing or singing or
who's the Jizzy Pearl of the 2000s.
Yes. Exactly. And they put out, besides those records, they put out a number of like 7-inch singles and stuff with sometimes split with other bands. But that's it. Like they're not necessarily going to be working on any new music as far as I can tell. It's just these one-off. They played Bumbershoot. They did Best Friends Forever festival last year, which I'm in Vegas. And I'm sure that those are, I don't want to say good paydays, but I'm sure that like it's enough to get the band together, spend a weekend in Vegas. I totally get that.
Yeah, it's worth the effort. I mean, I can't imagine it's, at least the material on the first couple albums, I can't imagine it's easy to jump back in and play some of this stuff. So
that's a good point.
Especially as you get a little, older.
Like, why did I play it this way? It's so hard.
It's so fast and complicated.
Who wrote this? We got some comments over at Patreon for this album. Gavin said, love this album, love the band at the time, great suggestion. has some similar sounds to Live Outside Andromeda, which will come in handy in a future episode. Where the album Live Outside Andromeda is a band that Gavin has teed up for a future pick.
Okay.
Jeff Gentis says this Jeff agrees with the other Jeff, and what the other Jeff said was it's not even 30 minutes long, so no need to make it shorter. It's a great blast of energy. The biggest problem is that the album opener is such an all-time jam. It's hard for the rest of the very good songs to keep up that pace. And then Kyle Bittner said, fun album, short, brisk, and I agree that there isn't anything worth removing. So Jay, this is, as mentioned, this is actually a short record. This is only 38 minutes.
Yeah.
So we should do it's 27 minutes. This is a 27-minute album released in 2002. In future pressings, not the original one on Lookout, they did add the 4 songs from the EP to make it a little bit longer.
Oh.
So this episode will probably be longer than the actual album. But we'll do our best to not go crazy. Brooklyn Vegan placed it number 33 out of 35 of 2002's best emo and post-hardcore albums. Stereo Gum did a 20th anniversary, said that, quote, 28 delirious minutes that are enough to leave you breathless and stirred. He called it fast and urgent and adrenaline charged, rich and dynamic. So it's gotten some appreciation, I guess you'd say, past its time, which not all 2000 bands have.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good to see.
Yeah. So let's get into talking about this record. What works for you on Good Health by Pretty Girls Make Graves?
Well, I was excited to go back and visit this one. Like I said, it was a pretty important album to me at the time, but it's been a long while since I heard the band. And I think as I re-examined it and thought about what is it that about this it's connecting with me so well at the time and even now, but particularly at the time. And I think it's kind of maximalist. It's like everything. Like right out of the gate, I mean, yeah, as you get deeper into the album, this is obviously a kind of a post-rock, emo-ish, right? A lot of newish kind of ideas. But like right out of the gate, Speakers Push the Air. I mean, that's just a hard rock anthem. Yes, it's got some like contemporary guitar playing and, styles to it. But at its heart, it's got the energy of like an 80s rock anthem. And there's threads of that through the album, but then it's also very technical. You've got some really intricate guitar parts that, like I said, they're 2 guitars that are sometimes at odds with each other. A lot of the stuff is not straightforward, just chords. It's angsty and high energy, but it's also at times, very melodic and a song like The Getaway. But then also incredibly angular. There's some very dissonant things and notes that kind of are a little harsh and not always super pretty, but then it can be very sweet at times, and aggressive. It's just like and it's male and female. Like it has a little bit of like everything that had happened in rock music, at least high energy rock music, um, up until that point, all mashed up into this one 27-minute album. Um, and I think that's what, at the time, I resonated so much with coming out of the 90s, just looking for like a reinvigoration of, things from the past that I loved, sounds and ideas. And like, a band like this and many others were picking those up and then combining with the things that I loved from the 90s, and into one big new idea. It's masterful in how it takes all that stuff and um, keeps it fairly accessible. Um, and the way it's doing it is it's doing a lot of alternating between like complexity and simplicity. So like you'll have section where the guitars are really complex, but the rhythm is very simple. And then all of a sudden it flips and then the rhythm gets complex and the guitars get simple. It just, or there'll be a part that's very angular and weird, and then it'll flip to a part that's like a chant along, super simple hook. And it just does that through the whole record. So you're constantly getting this like mode switching going on where your brain can process, I think, everything pretty quickly. It's not an album you got to spend a lot of time with to get. I think right out of the gate you pretty much get it. And obviously you get more out of it the more you listen to it, but um despite it being at times pretty angular and um dense, it manages it in a way that you can process it and still hook into the energy of the whole thing. It's just very focused on delivering that energy through the whole record. It explores rhythmic ideas that are cohesive to that. So it never like drags. It's always like, they're playing with like reggae ska kind of feel drum beats and sing-alongs and things that are high energy and fun. There's even a little blending of drum machines in here to experiment a bit and getting into things that almost sound like Gang of Four, kind of post-punk. Um, all the technical parts feel like a rush of energy versus a rigorous exercise. It's like a guitar part. You're like, oh wow, that guitar part was super cool, but it's delivered in a way it was just like explodes, not, oh, I've been practicing this in my bedroom for 3 weeks and I'm going to play it perfectly for you. It's got this urgency and consistent energy through the whole thing. Again, that keeps it easy to get into it physically. And then there's enough going on, I think, with the mode shifting and technical abilities that, sort of your brain can also get into that aspect of it as well. And I think all of that coming together into one super condensed 27 minutes is what I like, liked about it at the time and still like about it. It's like, to me, I think you would use the term maximalist as maybe being more like prog-ish, but this isn't like that. It's a maximalist in a different way. It's like mashing all the ideas of rock music to that point. To me, all the things I loved about rock music up until 2002 into one 27-minute album.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what worked for me. How about you?
Well, like you, the maximalist approach to this is what really nails it. It sounds like four bands in unison, just somehow mashing their, like, you get the at the drive-in angular sound to this. You get, like you said, there's some interesting, weird takes on post-punk with like Bring It On, Golden Pond, and you get the great use of the backing vocals when they are in like sort of like the background and just giving these yelps and yelling things.
Yeah.
And she's dominating the speakers. Like it's so cool. It's so unique to this era of indie rock where you had like I don't want to, things were not regimented in the 90s, but like you didn't really expect to have anything other than either a guy singing lead or a girl singing lead.
Yep.
That's just the way it was. And so for them to play around with this vocal approach is a lot of fun. The opening track to me is one of the great opening tracks of the decade.
Yep.
Like it sets up this album so well. You cannot just fist pump to that. And the fact that the lyrics are pretty great in terms of like what it feels like to hear music that hits you.
Yep.
Like they're essentially singing to you the way you're feeling as this song is happening, where you're like, do you the line about do you life's complications and frustrations, they disappear when the music starts playing. I found a place where it feels all right. I heard a record and it opened my eyes. It's a unique experience that I don't think we're going to have anymore unless you buy physical media. You know what I mean? Like sitting down, having a record in front of you, being like enthralled with it, playing it over and over again, dancing around to the music. I mean, maybe people do that with Spotify or what have you. I feel like the physical act of like holding music is it's just a different level that this song understands. Like you couldn't put it away. Like you can always like, you can't put away a Spotify album. You just switch to something, but to like, you don't want to take it out of your car CD player, or you don't want to take it off the turntable because you just love playing it over and over again. Like that's what that song makes me feel.
And this was really the last era for me. Like I said, I was still buying CDs. I had this on CD.
Yeah.
It was that experience. Yeah. I think I had like a 6-disc CD player in my car or whatever. And like, this is one of the ones that got stuck in there, and I listened to it for months, and didn't want to put it away.
I got to give it up for Jay Clark because the guitar playing on this album is wild. Like it's all over the place. He utilizes a lot of like just running his fingers up and down the neck of like a single string with like you get just like these siren sounds. They're fantastic.
Yeah.
And it's such an interesting balance between her, really great melodies and lyrics, and then his bizarre, great angular guitar playing that's happening. And then you have this like just killer rhythm section that's switching on a dime from, playing in like a up tempo 4/4 and then like dropping into halftime and doing some sort of crazy like tom fills. And it's a band firing on all cylinders for like 30 minutes is what it sounds like.
I felt like this era too, this early 2000s era was like drumming went to a whole new level. It was so rare in the 90s.
Yes.
And even the 80s that you would hear this many drummers that were this technical, but also had a great feel. And all of a sudden there was this explosion. I don't know what happened, but it felt like in the early 2000s where it was like every band you went and saw, you're like, Jesus, all these drummers are incredible.
Yeah. It didn't feel like people appreciated drummers unless they were with huge, like John Bonham, Alex Van Halen, like those kind of people, or they're progressive drummers.
Mm-hmm.
Like you didn't really hear. I don't know what the drummer from Better Than Ezra, his name is, or what I feel like the 2000s was the first time where I started paying attention to drummers that weren't like huge names. That weren't in huge bands, and it probably, corresponds to me going to see more shows in small venues. But I remember being able, and not just that, but just being able to say that person's doing something unique and really interesting. I don't know like what the technical thing is happening, but I can hear the sound and the feel and everything is just, it's different to me.
Yeah, there's just a really good balance, especially on this record, of technical ability, but then also knowing when to just be simple and just like, hit quarter notes on the kick and make sure you really emphasize the groove, or be able to shift into like something technical to something that, has more of like a reggae feel to give the song, just a different swing. Maybe some of that came out of, post-punk, like a lot of these people like learning stuff that's a little, more technical but noisy, but then getting into bands like this, they're trying to play a little bit more pop and then being able to translate that. I don't know, but this is just a good example of that style of drumming that was so exciting in the early 2000s.
Yeah. Plays into the dynamics on this record, which are great.
Yeah.
They're constantly shifting, dropping things out. The bass will go away for a verse, or the drums will switch up. Even though it's the same part, they'll do something different the next time. There's just so much thought put into the dynamics and the transitions. Just everything like hits really, really like on point to I mean, I know there are a lot of post-hardcore bands that are like that. Like their precision, they're doing insane, like Polvo and a number of bands that are doing really technical stuff. But to do it in this format with these like very short, what are essentially like catchy, they're not pop rock songs, but like there's hooks here.
Yeah. No, to me, there's definitely a theme across this whole thing of like trying to make this have some kind of pop appeal to it. I don't know that they wanted to be on the radio, but there was some sensibility of like trying to write songs that were melodic and accessible and, fun, had a sense of fun to them, I guess,
Yeah. And this was produced by the band with Phil Eck. Phil Eck is, he produced, he's worked a lot with Jack Endino.
Okay.
And he's produced bands like Built to Spill, Band of Horses, Fleet Foxes, Modest Mouse, The Shins, Mudhoney. I mean, he's got a pretty interesting and the Walkman. Some of these David Cross's comedy album.
And in my memory, when we were thinking about this band and I was trying to think of which album to do, my memory of this album was that it was production wise more of what the sweet spot for me. Like you can hear the performance. It still sounds great. The drums are roomy. The guitar's got a little, effects on it, but I think those are all straight from the guitar. There's not my memory is that as the band goes, it gets a little more slicker.
Yeah.
And this still felt raw, but not engineered well. Like it's a great sounding record. You can crank it. It sounds fantastic, but not overproduced.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know like what the recording process was, because it just says they recorded it in December of 2001, and then the album came out in April of 2002. So I mean, did they nail this thing in like a couple days?
Yeah.
How did they multi-track it? Part of me thinks, well, they had to play together. Like, how would you multi-track this? But then multi-tracking it would be able to lock it in. But I don't feel like you'd get the same like feel that you get when you play all the band plays live. So I'd actually be curious to know how they did that, because I do like you remember the next albums being slicker.
This captured a performance energy. And my sense was as the records went, you just got less of that performance energy. It became more of like, it felt like overdubbed albums, multi-track albums.
So is there anything that doesn't work for you on this record?
I think my first, when I first revisited it, I was a little struck by just how close musically at moments it is at the drive-in. Now, I think they do a great job of like breaking out and doing their own thing so that it's rooted in more melody and I think a pop sensibility that is very different than at the drive-in. And th- throughout the record, you see who this band is and they become its own identity. But if you just did like some needle drops, on this record, you might, for a couple, 10, 15 seconds, swear you're listening to an At the Drive-In album. Um, so, I think that's fine. It's some of that dueling guitar stuff can also be a little much to process for people. I'm thinking of like If You Hate Your Friends is a good example of like there's some parts in that song where it's really, pretty challenging. Now my ears are tuned to it, but I could hear, people now in particular, maybe being overwhelmed by it if they've never like got into this genre or music or this era of music, with sort of the dueling guitar parts. Literally at times sound like they're in a fight trying to play different songs.
It reminded me of mid-period Fugazi at times.
Oh, yeah. I'm tuned to that. I like it. Actually, I haven't heard things like this in a long time, which was also kind of fun. Of like, oh man, guitar playing was wild in the early 2000s. Like nobody's doing this anymore. I wish more bands, were pushing the envelope a bit more, like this style. But I could see, say somebody who missed this era, and you go back and start listening to it, it might be a little bit hard to, tune in, get over that. That was really it, though. I'm nitpicking here and trying to find stuff. It's for what it is. It's pretty damn close to perfect to me. How about you? Anything that work?
I don't care for the Untitled song. That's about it, to be honest. No, I when I revisited it, while there's a lot of stuff I remember, it's not as hooky as I remember. Like I thought that there were more like big choruses, the way that like Speakers Push Air has like a big repetitive vocal. So I understood what other people were saying. Like there was a comment about even though the other 7 songs can't really, match up to the first song, they're all good on their own. I kind of feel like, Speakers Push Air is so special that it's almost, it's like having, Eddie Murphy in his prime open the show, and then you got to follow him. You're like, oh, great. Yeah. Even if I do a great job, people are going to talk about Eddie Murphy. So,
what's weird though is, so If You Hate Your Friends, You're Not Alone is, one of the more angular songs. It's kind of got this Beastie Boys delivery to it too. It's just super high energy. There's a lot going on, but it also has this lyric line that like shouldn't be hooky, but is. And I remember it very clearly. I know, here comes the girl with the ice cream cone. Like she repeats that line over and over. I'm like, and it's kind of buried. Now when I listen to it, I was like, how did I ever even pick up on that? But like, I love that line. It just made me think like, if I heard this now, would it still resonate in the same way it did then? Like, are my brain and ears tuned different for what a hook is now than they were in 2002? It was just an interesting, like, thought of, to your point about like, you remember it being hookier. Is that us changing? of what we're looking for or what we consider a hook now, 20 some plus years later?
I think that's, yeah, I think what I thought was hookier then was probably just in the context of a much narrower amount of music that I've been listening to.
Yeah.
Um, because I probably have listened to more, say, pop music in the last 20 years than I did
Yep.
in my previous
Me too.
30 years. Um, so it has
Yeah.
tuned me for more like a chorus hook, whereas back then I would be like, the hook is the verse. Like the hook is like a line that ends each verse or something like that. And
Hmm.
that's what you're remembering. Or the hook comes at the end, the way that like Don't Stop Believin' has the hook at the end of the song instead of, after a verse and a second verse. So I think it's just, sometimes the thing in the song that is my hook is not necessarily the hook. It's just like the weird out of place thing that happens and you're like, what was that? But I can't, now I'll never forget that part happened in that song. Like there's like Weezer songs where Matt Sharp does something like really weird in the background, and that's the thing that I
Yeah.
remember.
Yeah.
I think it's in I think he's like in El Scorcho. He goes like El Scorcho, like in
Right.
the.
Yeah.
It's like that's so juvenile, but I
Yeah.
love that. So anyway, uh, I don't really
Yeah.
have a lot to really diss. There's nothing. There's
Yeah.
nothing on here that I would change. Other than there's the cover does not have the name of the album, but it has a bunch of other words, which I hate that. That makes it very confusing because you're like, there's all these words on the album cover. Are any of them the album title?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. I think it's another case of,
But that's a
man,
minor.
keep it short, man. When you make a record that's only
Yes.
30 minutes or less, it's hard to find things to not like about it, or much harder, not impossible, obviously, but,
Right.
um,
I mean, there are two
I'm kind of
songs over
disappointed to
4
hear that
minutes. They're not all 2 minute songs. Like they're
no, I know. That's what's wild. I still like looking at the song, the track, times. My brain can't process how that gets to only 27 minutes. Cause I'm like 4 minutes, three and a half. Like
we're already at 50 minutes.
we should be up there, but it's only 9 tracks.
Yeah.
I'm kind of disappointed to hear that they did a version that includes the EP. Cause I think while I think I remember liking the EP too, I just keep it short, man. Keep it under 30. If you can, keep it under 30 minutes.
That's just a super saver deal that they have at Kmart and various Sears. You get them together for $9.99. You get the EP and the album together. A super saver.
The old super
saver. A nice price, if you will.
Pick it up with a pack of gum on your way out.
Yeah, or maybe some. What was the rubber? Not the rubber. The baseball chew. What was that called?
Big League Chew.
Big League. Get some Big League Chew. Anyway, overall rating, Jay. What do you say? Where the album better?
Yeah, this is a worthy album. Like I said, it's right. It's almost perfect. I mean, if you like this kind of music, it's hard to quibble with it. Like it's just got, like I said, it's got a little bit of everything. I mean, I would say if you love rock and roll, like, and in this fullest sense of what that word means, right? Not just hard rock, not just pop rock. If you like the full spectrum, this is probably a record you should check out because they're touching on so much of it. But
yeah, absolutely worthy album. Easy worthy album for me. When you picked it, I was like, oh, this is going to be fun because this is a good record that I'm very much looking forward to spending some time with.
Just such a great band. It's just so, again, I think I've said this on almost all these episodes we've done to these bands from the early 90s in the mid 90s is like, there was so much promise. Like
there was so much
you
promise.
Just wish this band could have been so much bigger than it was. It doesn't make sense. Even this album and the EP, being made mostly independently is just blowing my mind. Like, how did this band not have a huge record deal
Right.
right out of the gate? I don't understand.
I don't know. But our community, maybe they know. They said 83% were the album, 17% decent single. I'm guessing the first song would be the decent single. But there are some naysayers out there. There always will be. Nothing we can do about that. Just got to
I'm
accept
sorry
it and
for
move
you.
on. Just got to move on.
I'm sorry you hate music.
Why do you hate all music? If this episode brought back good memories, positive vibes, that sort of thing, join us at digmeoutpodcast.com to explore our free archive of over 850 episodes, history of the band posts, and weekly new release roundups. Want more? Paid subscribers unlock bonus podcast episodes covering 70s, 80s, and aughts rock, new release reviews, and access to our private Discord community. That's digmeoutpodcast.com. And while you're there, suggest an album you think deserves to be featured on a future episode of Dig Me Out. For Jay, I'm Tim. We're out, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Dig Me Out.
Hey, I'm really sorry to interrupt. You've had headphones on. Cujo just got sprayed by a skunk. So I'll be back.
Oh,
It has been chaos.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Our neighbor has a little dog. Well, our neighbor passed away a couple weeks ago. Her daughter and granddaughter are at the house now. And she had a dog named Cujo, but it's funny because Cujo is actually this tiny little poodle, like not like you would expect to be a dog named Poodle. Apparently, so Cujo likes to dig under our fence and come and see our dogs. Apparently, got out into the street and got spayed by a skunk, and everybody's like panicking because they've never dealt with that. We have. Our Bowie stuck his face in the stomach of a dead skunk.
Oh yeah, I remember you telling me that.
That was fun. Anyway,